Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
I'm very delighted and humbled to be here and to worship with you and to share briefly our ministry. You've got enough of the history of the church and the nation. And so I will not go into that, but I will share with you what God has done with and through the Lutheran Church in Liberia. Also with your prayers all around the world, beginning with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. May I first begin by saying, religiously, many Americans know about Liberia. Politically and geographically, Americans know very little about Liberia. Because I have traveled in almost 25 states of the United States. And every time I'm asked about Liberia, it is like it doesn't exist. But in the church context, many missionaries, by thousands, in the last 150 years, have been in Liberia, have labored. Some died there on the field. Some got drowned. Some died of malaria. And yet, they continue to labor. They continue to accompany us. And that is how the bond of our faith unites us more than what happened in the political and economic world. And that's how we are grateful wherever we go, where we have been, to just lift that up. We are a small church, but very important church in the history of Liberia. We have a membership of 71,196, which would be more than that. But we have not been able to do accurate statistics because of the Civil War, when people have been going back and forth, back and forth. It is our hope in this year, by early next year, we'll have full statistics. But that is how we are. And we are presently with 50 parishes and over 200 congregations and about 500 preaching points. Preaching points are little villages within a parish. Some are 30, some are 25, some are 15. We also do ministry in education and healing. And we have 12 high schools with 50 elementary and junior high schools. We have 2 major hospitals, one primarily run by a church and one ecumenically run by 2 other churches with the Lutheran Church and also with support from government. During the civil crisis, most of those facilities were destroyed. Some 2 times, some looted more than 3 times. As a result, the church faced the most difficult period. And indeed, Lutheran Church in Liberia, in all respect, we can say was the hardest hit on the 29th of July 1990, government troops massacred more than 600 people, basically armless people, including women and children. They almost burned the church. I was later informed that it was not because rebels were dead, but the father of the rebel leader, Charles Taylor, was in the parsonage. And that was the main reason. They were looking for him everywhere and to kill everybody in the place where he was. But also many places, the institutions were destroyed. In outlying rural places where there was no television, there was no radio, there was no news writers. So those were good targets for destruction. A Lutheran church being a rural-based church, because that's what Morris' officer said. When he went to Liberia, he didn't want to preach where the gospel was already preached. He wanted to go deeper in the villages, in the rural places where Christ had not been heard. And that was the model of church planting carried out by Lutheran missionaries. So we are a rural-based church, and all the institutions in rural Liberia were destroyed. And now how come a church that is wounded, all its facilities destroyed? In fact, our first national bishop died in unexplained circumstances. The retired Bishop Roland Ping was in Banga. The rebel held headquarters. Another rebel group attacked and took him and his wife by force, and they were carrying them and they separated them, and in the process he died. No one was ever informed of how he died. Three of our pastors were murdered, and many others. Not because they were hostile to either government or the rebels, but because of the place where they were at the time. And so, how come we can be part of a process of healing? So that was the real task, and it's still been the task of the church. The wounded healer, Lutheran Church being affected by destruction of its facilities, institutions, the healing and educational institutions, the preaching institutions, all destroyed. And yet we have a task to talk about healing and reconciliation. So our task as bishop at the beginning, even before becoming bishop, we realized that the only way we can be of ourselves in our country is to reconcile, is to talk about, to heal the trauma of the nation, which we started a program called Trauma Healing and Reconciliation, which are work and is spread throughout the length and breadth of the nation. And I said to my fellow bishops, though young at the time or new, and I said to them, the best thing we can do for our country is to be in the middle. It's not to take side. It's not to share blame, to blame other people. But our history itself is embedded with all the things that call for war and hatred. Because the same way the free slaves were treated in the United States when they came, they established the same pattern. And they have one-party government, and they rule everyone. And everyone was forced labor. And so there are a lot of things that we just can't blame one side for what happened. But let's take responsibility. Let's take the blame for ourselves. And that's the only way we can move forward. And that has been taking place, though very, very difficult. And so we have a big program to reconcile the nation, beginning with ourselves. Another thing that we realized for the need of our church was, how can we be a church without understanding our own roots? Before I became bishop, we are only 2 pastors who have master's degree in theology. And the rest were all certificate holders. So we said we needed educated pastors to plan the church. For the future of the church, we need people who can think ahead, not only today. And we all help members of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, directly or indirectly. What is called here designated giving. When ELCA makes decision to provide funding for education, for theological education, for health care, for trauma healing, for peace building, I believe it has been because of you. If you are withheld your designated giving to ELCA, to the Global Mission Office, what we have done, what we have achieved, we would never have been able to do so. Lutheran Church in Liberia has partnership with 3 churches and 1 mission body. The Danish Evangelical Mission, Church of Sweden, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Bavaria, Germany, and ELCA. But ELCA, being the founding church of the LCL, has participated and continue to participate in all the various ministries of the church: healing, teaching, preaching, and leadership development. Those other partners decide in a specific way which area to support, but ELCA does it generally and all over. And so what we have been able to achieve has been a credit to our partner churches, especially the ELCA. Last year we celebrated our 150th anniversary, and the theme was "Come This Far by Faith," where we lifted up the faith journeys of our forebears, their faith, their endurance, their services, those who die on the field, and recommitting ourselves to continue the journey by faith through the power of the Holy Spirit. In that process, the beginning of the mission station, where we also talk about Pastor David A. Day, his wife Emma. Yes, Morris Officer is considered the father of the Lutheran Church by establishment. But Reverend Dr. David A. Day did very excellent job. It was he who started the process of training indigenous leaders. It was he who said that the church must be planted in Africa and must be an indigenous church. Most of its resources must be gathered within here. Unfortunately, missionaries who followed suit, they did not continue that process. If they had continued, perhaps today we would not even be asking for money, because that was his intention. But others felt the people were poor, so they needed more help than asking them to give money. But that wasn't the way Reverend Day did see the church. And we decided as a church, the school that was in her name, we should rebuild that school. And we'll do it with not as partner church or anybody, but we ourselves will raise money. And that school was built and dedicated during the anniversary celebration in her honor, Emily V. Day. Of course, Apostle Johanna helped with others to rehabilitate David A. Day Memorial Lutheran Church, which is one of the oldest congregations of our church. We have also been able, you may know, in Africa, the HIV and AIDS pandemic. Liberia was not prominently known for HIV and AIDS. But I know in 1986 at our church hospital, Current Lutheran Hospital, a missionary medical doctor did observe a stream of virus, and they didn't know what it was. And that was from a lady from neighboring country, Guinea, who had come to the hospital for treatment. And that specimen was sent to the US and was later discovered that it was HIV and AIDS virus. As a church, we started teaching people at that very early moment what it was and what to do to prevent. So nothing was heard anymore until the 1989 Civil War, where rebels from different parts of Africa trained Liberians and started the war. And they used sex as a weapon. Forced women, young girls, sexually assaulting them, using them as their cooks to carry their weapons. And then peacekeeping troops that came from many parts of Africa, including Uganda, where the HIV and AIDS pandemic was very high, they also contributed to the spread of the virus in Liberia. So that we have high rate of infection. Again, Lutheran Church in Liberia decided to be the lead to train all our pastors, our lay leaders, about the virus, and also to train them to be counselors. So that Lutheran Church in Liberia is #1 faith-based institution that is leading in the fight against the HIV and AIDS virus. So that is a task that we are doing, and as a church, we are known for doing that. Where we are today, as I said earlier, our church suffered a lot. Not only the loss of human beings, but most of our facilities, our institutions. The task we continue to carry on, which is a major challenge for us, is how to rehabilitate our healing, our educational facilities, so that we can continue to render services to the people of Liberia. In some places, especially in Europe, when I go and talk about hospital, talk about school, the question I'm asked is, why should church be involved in education? Why should church be involved in hospital business? This is the work of government, not the church. You should want to preach and pray. That's all we need to do. But the history of the country, they don't know. And so Liberia, as Bishop Emeritus me was saying to you, Liberia was founded, established, not by the government of the United States of America. It was established by an NGO, non-governmental organization, the American Colonization Society, kind-hearted Americans who felt the slaves had no home, had no place, had no freedom, had no opportunity for job, Therefore, they should look for a place in Africa where they could send them. It was only by their decision they influenced government to participate, because no NGO could have carried such an opportunity or such a task out of the United States without being under the auspices of the U.S. government. And that's why it did happen. In 25 years, how many of the slaves who were free ever went to school? How many of them were educated? But within 25 years, they were given the responsibility to establish their own nation, to declare their own independence, and to run their own government. So you can see the task in Liberia. So most of the institutions in Liberia were run by churches. And that was part of the reason, the vision of Morris Officer, to help the young nation, to train people, their minds, their hands, to be able to contribute to the rising of this new Negro Republic in Africa. And so from that time to the present, the church has been present significantly. When you talk about the best hospitals, the best schools, they are run by churches. Government didn't have, even during the course of the 14 years, there was no government clinic, no government hospital, there was no school run by government. Only churches. When they were running, people were running from place to place, wherever they found respite, they sat there and opened school for the kids, those who were not fighting in the war. So that's the history of Liberia. Minus the church, Liberian government cannot and will not do away with the church. Even our present president continues to recognize that when government was not present, the church was here. When government could not educate, the church did that. When government could not medicate, the church did that. And so we cannot divide our preaching role from educating and healing. They also represent our witness to Jesus Christ. But also the young people who are coming after us. How will they learn about Jesus Christ? How will they get a model to become pastors, to become church workers tomorrow, if we do not have school to begin to teach them our faith, how to pass on to them? So that is the reason why we are in the healing ministry, we are in the educational ministry. Our advocacy, which is very important, we are being vocal but also constructive with our government to see what is right to do and to do for the people, and to plan clearly so that we get out of our civil strife nightmare and to develop a system that will be beneficial for our country. These are some of the things that we are doing. We have a challenge, and that challenge is not for you, but it's also to ask you to pray with us. As we said from the beginning, Morris Officer did plant the church. Reverend David Day did put new life in the church with a clear vision for a national church that will be responsible to govern, to propagate, and to teach. That plan did not work fine when other missionaries came. They felt pity and in sympathy with the destitute situation of the people and provided everything for them. So we are still struggling to get out of that dependency syndrome. There is always a belief, I don't know where it comes from, but from our members, from pastors who think that he'll see it, they help establish the church, they will always provide. They will always bring money. And that is the challenge I have as a bishop, and who will come after me, to just explain to them that times have changed. But even for our own good, as a church, for our own dignity, we need to continue to teach our people. We have so much, only if we can identify, focus, and work toward it. We have lands in abundance, and we have people. But we need to refocus our minds to that purpose. And that is the challenge that we have. We have continued this for a long time, and it's been affected more because of the Civil War. When people's homes were destroyed, whatever they had taken away, when they are going back to their villages, their towns, to settle, to re-establish, where is the priority? To give all the money to the church or to help themselves first? Most often, some say, we will help ourselves. Then we will see later on. Some say, no, we will not do that, we will help. But then there is a point to say, okay, but we will not help nationally. We will start with ourselves. We will build our church. So in that process, hey, central administration, we don't have money for you. We wouldn't have money to try to build our church. In fact, help us with money to pay our church. Help us with money to pay our pastors. So those are the challenges that we have presently. But we are thankful to Almighty God for your presence with us, for your prayers. And I conclude by saying the relationship with the Apostles' Covenant Synod has been very excellent. We've got more support and cooperation from the time containers were sent to Liberia. In 2000, we invited Bishop Mean, 1996, when we came here, and we said, let's go beyond containers. Could you please visit us to see the faces of the people you are sending the containers to? And that request was accepted. In 2000, Bishop Mean carried a buzzing delegation to Liberia. That was still the war period. Many places were not accessible, but they managed to reach to some places. And thereafter, they began to send volunteers who work with us, who pay their own way, who raise money, who carry things, library materials, books, medical materials, whatever that would be useful for the work. And we've been in that partnership, and it has grown. And we believe that significantly helped us where our ELCA as headquarter church could not help. The hospital, current Lutheran hospital, that is now meeting the needs of people. Without brothers and sisters in the Apostles' Covenant Synod, that hospital would have still remained closed. And more than 25,000 to 30,000 people would have been without medical help. It was through that partnership, and that continues to grow. So we just want to lift that up, because hopefully we'll be retiring next year and join the retirement club. But we hope we will not sit down. We'll continue to remain a vital part of the church wherever we are needed. Whatever we can do, we want to use our time more to teach. If we can have opportunity, the young pastors. I did a book on stewardship, but as administrator, I do not have the time to teach. And I hope that time I will be free and I will be able to teach young pastors, because I'm not making decisions anymore. But I can tell them what is right, what is the right thing to do. And I hope some of them will learn from what I do and what I say. Because I said to them over and over, to be a pastor is a shepherd, and you must be with your sheep. I said, there is no magic any other place. When you are with your sheep, when you know them and they know you, you don't need to ask them for anything. They will do it for you. But that is the hardest for my pastors to understand that. And I hope in the future they will understand. And we talk about financial challenges. I don't think they are important. they outweigh the gospel. When the gospel is preached in true word and practice, it will have impact on the lives of the people, and there will be a positive response. And you have helped us to train people. What is needed now is for them to focus on the gospel and serve the Lord, and there will be a blessing, which I firmly believe in it. No question about my faith, how to practice it, and how to live. And you have been part of that faith formation in our life, in the life of the LCL. I thank you ever so much. God bless you.
Questions?
Yeah.
I wonder about your own personal journey, where you came from to where you are now.
That's a very good question. My father and mother were not Christians. And it didn't mean they didn't want to become Christians, but the portion of the land where we were, there wasn't any church at the time in the 40s. And when I moved out, after they died, I moved out to a village, another village there where I got encounter with the gospel. My Miller, some of you may have heard of Marion T. Miller, was popularly known person. I learned she came from Sunbury, Pennsylvania, and she was very great Bible woman. She was a literacy teacher. She never spoke the language, but she insisted to train people to learn to speak. And that was the beginning of my faith journey. And I learned how to read and write in my own vernacular before ever I went to formal school. I was 16 years old before I started going to formal school. But I also had an effect in my life. When I was growing up in a little village in Africa, what was then known as smallpox, a very deadly disease that was contagious but would kill at a short notice. I was in a village where this pandemic attacked, and many people died, including my grand-uncle's wife, 3 of his grown-up children, and I was sleeping in bed with a boy who and I were of the same age. He had that disease, and everybody was surprised. I didn't get it. 3 months before government recognized that, and they brought the smallpox vaccine. After I have gone from the village, and later on, my life in my catechism classes, and the missionary pastor was asking me to tell my life story. And I told that story. And he said there was a need for 10 pastors. At the time, Lutheran Church didn't have national pastors. There are only 4 national pastors in the field. Will you see this as a purpose? God rescue you from death to minister to him, to be a pastor. To be a pastor was not anything that I ever thought to do. My plan was to be a medical doctor if I'm successful in school, because doctors don't talk plenty, and to be a pastor would be too much talking. To be a teacher would be the same, so I didn't like talking too much. But I said, Pastor, I will think about it. But that was the beginning, and it kept haunting me. And after high school, I great grades, excellent grades, and I was selected to to go to university and plan to be a medical doctor. My uncle, that was the process he was supporting. How it came about, one morning in church I was cleaning the church yard, doing Sunday school, and I saw on the bulletin, wanted theological students. It just caught my attention. And I went to the pastor and I reported myself. And I told my uncle, and my uncle did not want to hear me talk about that. But that's how the decision was made. And to pay my way to go there to take the test, my uncle refused to give me money. And that was it. But that's how I got led into the ministry and said, I believe that contact with the pastor, I believe God has something for me to do. And I committed my life to Jesus in that process. And I have never made, and I will not make any statement of regret for God choosing me to be a pastor.
Thank you.
What are the other religions in Liberia? Are there a lot of Muslims? Are there or are they just, or they don't have any faith? Talk to me about the faiths, various faiths.
And so explain the cooperation between Muslims and Christians.
Okay, there are a lot of Muslims in Liberia. They used to say that they are more in number than Christians, but that's not true. The last statistics of the country, 2008, indicates that Christians are 85%, make up 85% of the population, and 10% Muslim, and the rest non-Christians, traditional, we call them African traditional religion. But there's a very strong collaboration between Christians and Muslims, unlike many other countries, even though there are still radical elements that do not want cooperation between the two, from the side of the Christians and also, but mostly from the side of the Muslims. But we do work together, and our purpose of working together is not to, that's a mistake some of them do have, both sides. They think when Christians and Muslims come together, they are losing their faith, their grip on their faith. And we tell them that is not the purpose. The purpose is for peaceful coexistence, to get to know more about each other, to respect each other, our value, what we believe in, to recognize that each religion is here to stay. So it's not like we are fighting to win you over and become us, or they say we're fighting to win you over and become us. So when we draw the boundary clearly, then we are able to respect one another and to work for peace. When there is any national issue, local incident, we come together and resolve. And that is the basis of which we are working together in a group called Inter-Religious Council.
Well, then is there any proselytizing done at all?
Yes, but mostly it's not done intentionally to say we go to Muslim, we win a Muslim over, or they come to us. Of course, we know the process of how they proselytize. They begin with women intermarriage, and we try to let our people know. And most of them are business oriented. They have money, and so when they marry from the family, from another group, the first thing, those who are now with them, they have to worship, they have to become Muslims. And all the children become Muslim. There is no decision of freedom whether I want to be Muslim or not. They are compelled to be. Whereby in our Christian life, it is not so. We don't force people to be a member of the church or a particular denomination. But some have come to join, to become Christians, which is also a very big sacrifice on their part.
And in Liberia, the bishop was the president of the Liberia Council of Churches. Most of the American denominations, mainline denominations, are in Liberia. Well, I will say thank you to Bishop Harris. Folks leaving, choir has to rehearse. Thanks to Bishop Harris. He will certainly be here and before some time before worship begins, and other questions, you please feel free to ask him. Again, as you see, he was not only a tremendous leader for his people in Liberia, but a wonderful spokesman for the church as it exists throughout the world. So we are grateful and honored to have you here this morning, Bishop.
Thank you.